Can everybody see me? Because I cannot see myself.
I can see you all right.
Okay, thanks, Bo. Okay, now it's 7:35. I guess start. And yeah, welcome to the first English Deep Talk session here on Zoom. Super happy to also welcome our expert of the day here, Bo Mérei, with whom we will discuss in a few minutes how to practice mental hygiene during challenging times like now with COVID-19. But before I hand over to Bo, I would just like to give some general information about the concept, why am I doing this, and also a little outlook to the upcoming events in April. And what is Deep Talk with? Deep Talk with is basically a weekly recurring event series, which is happening always here on Zoom every Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. And I'm inviting mental health experts from different fields to discuss topics around our mental health and our mental strength. And by doing this, I would like to build a community where we can all enhance like our knowledge and experience transfer on these topics, because I feel that even though that we hear or read more about mental health nowadays, that due to the existing stigma, we still tend to have problems opening up and talk about everything which comes down to our emotions and feelings and struggles, and which for me makes in the end absolutely no sense, because having feelings, emotions, struggles, fears, dreams is something so human, so we should actually feel comfortable by talking about it. This is basically the goal of Deep Talk with, to build a space where the stigma has no space, but where there's a lot of space to make information on mental health and different methods easier accessible by connecting experts with broader audiences like today. But also, to make it easier digestible and create a community which is driven by mutual support, understanding, and compassion, because I strongly believe that we all have something important to say and share in that terms. And I would like to encourage this with having these deep talks with you and with different experts. And why did I start all this? It actually comes from my personal struggles I had with mental illnesses during my life, especially in the last year, where I found myself in a state of total exhaustion, aka burnout. And when I was in the state of having all these huge questions running through my head, I was looking out for communities apart from the therapy, which I started, where deep topics get discussed openly, and where I don't have to feel ashamed or weird or psycho or emo about it to do so, and also get inspiration from experts and peers alike. And the result of this research was kind of disappointing, because I had to realize that there were not that many communities out there yet, obviously due to the still existing stigma, which offered this. And so I decided in the end of 2019, when I slowly got my energy back, that this is actually something what I would like to change. So to basically contribute to shrinking the stigma on mental health, to build a community, which I missed myself also for a long time, but also create this for other people and create this safe space where we can open up to each other, to ourselves, but also learn from each other. And Yeah, so here we are. I'm happy to host the first English speaking deep talk session today. The other two I hosted before were in German. But I realized that, especially now doing it digitally, that it would be nice to also reach the English speaking folks out there, and this is why I added English as a language. And I'm also pretty happy to announce that there will be now every week sessions coming up. This is the schedule for April. And the next English session will be on the 22nd with some, like, the lovely girls of Osmo Studios, and we will talk about how our belief systems, which we carry through our lives, are actually shaping the way we love. And yeah, there will be also two other German sessions coming up. One will be about resilience in crisis, and the other one will be with the shit show Berlin about shit feelings. And yeah, I would be really happy to welcome many of you also to the next sessions. They're always Wednesday, 7:30 p.m., always on Zoom, always for free, and always with different experts. And yeah, for more information, please follow deeptalkwith.x on Facebook or Instagram. And yeah, I think that's everything from my part for now. I just wanted to let you know before we start that this session is getting recorded, so that I can also make this accessible for people who didn't make it today to dial themselves in. The whole session will probably take around 90 minutes, depending also on the interaction between us, because there will be always some space for asking questions in between. If you have questions coming up while Bo is talking, please just write them down in the chat, and then we will go through them when having the space for the ask questions. And yeah, and please mute yourself. This would be nice if we don't hear you eating your crisps. And yeah, I would say let's start, and I will hand over to our expert of today, Bo Mérei. I hope you enjoy it.
Thank you. I guess you can hear me now. Yes, thank you. Okay, so now I'm going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. All right, hopefully you can see it. So welcome to the session. Yeah, exciting. Mental hygiene in the times of Corona. When we started talking or brainstorming about this session last week, actually, I believe, with Kathy, I told her that I think I don't want to have a lot of preparation time, because I think our feelings about what's going on keep changing almost every day. So a big preparation time is anyway not going to help me, because by the time I present or I meet you today, it's just going to be completely else. So what we did, and right now I'm kind of inviting you on a process or on a journey with me, is just 1 second, yeah. We asked some questions. I don't know if you're aware of this, but we asked some questions in terms of how you're feeling right now, or a couple of days ago when we asked the question, and what questions you would be having. And some of the answers that came up were overthinking, I'm feeling overwhelmed, anxiety, worrying, feeling uncertainties, feeling self-doubt, feeling, I guess, a sense of loss as well, thinking whether it was all useless that I have done before to prepare myself for my life. So what I did was took these questions as a basis, and I kind of built around what I will be talking about around these topics. But before we go into that, you may be feeling something completely else right now. So what I would really like to invite you is just to take a deep breath right now. And, you know, if you want to, you're invited to turn off any other distraction and just, you know, take a deep breath. Just try to feel what's going on with you right now. Just observe what you're noticing in your body. Are there any pleasant feelings right now in your body? Are there any unpleasant feelings in your body? And just try to allow all of that to happen. And then you may want to just check out how your mind is doing at this point in time. Is it racing around? Is it relatively calm? And just allow that as well. And then finally, just check out how you're feeling emotionally right now. Is there one emotion that's very present right now? Are there more? And see if you can just allow all of that to happen. Okay, and then you can take another deep breath and come back. And I'd love to ask you, first of all, how you're doing. And I'd invite you actually to use the chat box, which I will, oops, 1 second, I will hopefully find so that I can see as well. So yeah, I give you a minute or two. Just if you feel like sharing how you're feeling right now with the group here. Of course, that's all an invitation. Okay. All right. Well, I am feeling excited to be here. Sad. Thank you. Bored. Okay, thank you. Quite okay with the sunshine and loved ones around. Very nice. Lethargic. Crazy. Overwhelmed. Welcome. All good. Okay. I'm hoping to onshore. That's a very good space to be. Feeling onshore. That's always a good starting point. Exhausted. Welcome here. Okay, I will close this chat box, but please keep sharing throughout the session. Also, Kathy will be continuously sharing. I may not see it while I'm talking, but at certain points I will stop. So one of my thoughts was that I want to make it a little bit more kind of helpful for you to follow. So I felt we're so saturated with Zoom sessions and with seeing lots of text, and everything is so polished and written, and websites and so on, that I actually challenged myself, and I did a series of photos of my index cards. So this is what the whole presentation is going to look like. I hope you enjoy it. I did enjoy preparing it, and I think I'll show you a snapshot later on about how that went. There's a few. I will, as I start into the topic, I'll also give you a few pointers about how the presentation is structured. A few notes. So my mission today is that you leave this session feeling empowered. There's loads of awesome information around, and perhaps a bit too much as well. And there's lots of talks going on about what you can do, so there's a lot going on. And one of the things that I noticed, that a lot of them kind of help me with my intellectual curiosity, but do not necessarily make me feel more in charge or in power. So I listen, and then at the end I'm like, okay, good, I learned something. So what I wanted to do is focus a little bit on not so much on the intellectual curiosity as how I would perceive, or my hypothesis about what your emotional need would be today, and that is to feel a little bit more in charge in a situation which is leaving us a lot out of control, and I'll talk a little bit about that. So the way I'm going to do that, or that's at least my hypothesis, and then let's see how it works, is that I essentially, all I did was collect lots of tips and ideas and practices and methods that I would invite you to try, potentially, if you feel that works for you. And my challenge to you would be to leave this session with one commitment. So try to leave the sessions with one idea. Okay, that's something I could try. Yeah, because then, even though your circumstances may not have changed, but you will still have something that you can actually do that's in your power, right? That's hence the element of empowerment. You do not need to take notes. I welcome, like, if you have that idea, or this is something interesting, you can write it down. But everything that you will see is my gift to you. So I don't know, I can share it, or I'll share it with Kathy, and then she can share it. So you don't need to take notes of the exercise and stuff like that. You can have all of this. Right. The second important point is that the way I work is essentially, I do not believe that there's so to speak, an absolute truth, or there's no one method that's right. What there is process, your process, and all I do is help and give offers and give invitations. So I actually have no idea which method would work for you right now in this moment. That's why I'm offering a range of options. I will also be talking a little bit about the approaches and which approach could work for what. But what you are welcome to do is really to decide. We are all in the same crisis, so to speak, but we're all perceiving it differently. We could also see from the sharing that we're also right now in this session in different emotional moods. What's happening in the outside world could be also triggering different past experiences and so on. So even though we're all potentially sitting at home right now, and what's happening on the outside is pretty similar for all of us, we're all going through different things. And it is for that reason that there's no one size fits all. There's only your process. So I invite you to keep that responsibility of making sure that you choose whatever is right for you. And then finally, it's a very important disclaimer, is that anything you hear here and anything you hear anywhere does not substitute help, and emergency help in particular. So I think that's why I think that the analogy with the mental hygiene is good. Hygiene also is, you wash your hand, but if you're sick, you do need a doctor. Same thing. I will be sharing lots of things which I honestly think could be very useful. But if you feel you're in a high distress, then it's really okay to look for professional help. And this is absolutely no advertising, because you may actually need psychotherapy help. There's crisis services in Berlin, so that's absolutely not my territory. It's just for you to know that there are these options available as well. And yeah, and it's something to be taken seriously. So going to our topic finally. So what I did was, as I said, I took these questions and I kind of brainstormed lots of ideas, which looks really overwhelming right now. Please don't be. I will be taking you step by step through this process. All you need to see in this chart in particular is the colors. I would like to show that. You will see yellow cards. So the yellow cards, and there's only 3 of them in the whole deck, are going to be the one where I'm kind of sharing a bit of, in my humble opinion, kind of theory, or not even, I don't know, like my yeah, a little bit more my perspective on the issue. The rest is all practical stuff. That's how important it was for me to keep it in the practice and to keep it with you, to be able to do it. And then, so in my approach, or in the way I work, or in my idea of the personality, we all have different parts of ourselves, or of our personality, and it is the, let's say, the inner emotional self, or the inner child, that's feeling the anxiety and the overwhelm and the self-doubt and so on a lot. And there are different approaches to how we can help this inner child. And there are some more rational approaches. These would be the rational adult self, helping, framing, etc. These will be the white cards. And then there are the more pre-rational, so to speak, more instinctive, more listening, talking, being present, being more mindful, and so on. So the approaches will be different based on the color. You don't really need to pay too much attention. I just wanted to explain why I did what I did. Also, it's very interesting because I think psychological schools vary, and this is one key difference. I think cognitive, the more cognitive approaches would be more recommending methods that would be standing on the white cards, and there are other, like Gestalt or mindfulness-based practices, would be more recommending things that are on the green cards. When I collected all my ideas, there were 12 green and 12 white cards, so there seems to be a balance in that. This is important because if you feel bored by very rational stuff, then be sure that there's also going to be other stuff, and other way around as well. Okay, let's dive into it. So the first cluster, or the first question that I was thinking about was, I'm feeling overwhelmed by everything that's going on, right? Overwhelm was also a feeling that that came up right now from the group in the sharing. And I think there's a lot to be overwhelmed about. And overwhelm can then also lead to being irritated, being angry. So there's a lot of, obviously, there's always a lot of emotions that connect. Also, a point is these things, right now I created cluster by the questions, but I think it's a little bit arbitrary. So I think these are sometimes go very, very closely one after the other. And essentially the first thing that I wanted to say is, there is this part of ourselves, and this I think very importantly a part of why we're overwhelmed right now, is there's a part of ourselves that tends to say I should be doing something, or I must be doing something. This is this perhaps an inner critic in us. I think there's a lot of pressure right now going on about you could work out now, you could start your side business, you could take a free course, there's a lot of free stuff available, take a webinar, there's a lot of stuff going on, right? So we tend to be so, yes, I should do that, I should do that, I should do that. And what I'm trying to say is says who, yeah, to take that meta position, and I'll go much more into detail later on. You're always invited to reflect on what it is that you need in that specific point in time. And that is why you will always see this posted here, an invitation to, because I feel it's, you will see a lot of things that like I wrote, you can do that, but I did not write always, but just imagine that it's always just an invitation to. And I don't think you should, there's actually no way you can take all that you hear here today. I think all you can potentially promise yourself is to take 1 or 2 seeds out of all of this and try to give that a little bit of your attention. I think it's already going to be great, yeah? But I think this overwhelm, the reason why I wanted to start with this slide is because I don't want this presentation to be another source of overwhelm, which is really easily could be. So yeah, I just want to stress at the beginning that I don't think this is business as usual at all. And one of the things that are going on right now is that a lot of sources try to make us feel like this is totally business as usual. There's a very unexpected, strange situation going on, which is new for everybody, and so obviously language is a form of hypnosis. So what we're going to do is we're going to invent words or bring in words that we already know, words like home office or homeschooling. Those are known concepts, so they make us feel safe, because there's an unknown situation. So we try to bring it closer, but by bringing in safer, like known concepts. But actually, if you think about it, this is not like home office, yeah? There are some of us, I'm also self-employed, so I spend a lot of time at home, but this is not the same, because now your family is at home as well, most probably. Your whole company is at home. You're expected to have Zoom calls all day long with your colleagues who see the back of your living room, in your bad hair and your hoodie. So there's a lot of stuff going on which is not at all normal. Then the school and so on. So the one thing that I think is very important to stress at the beginning is that this is unusual, and because it's something new, you are also welcome to recalibrate the expectations, both internal and external. And because you're recalibrating the expectations, this also invites you to rethink and be intentional about several parts of your life. Yeah, and these are the big that you see at the right side of the screen right now, and I'll go into them one by one. So the first one is about reevaluating expectations, and this is a quick exercise that I would offer if you're thinking about, or if you're having difficulty essentially aligning on priorities, first of all, and second of all, if you're struggling, if you're feeling that you're under delivering even in the current situation. And what this is, I don't know if you can see. So basically how I would do it, and I really just brainstormed this the other day. So how I would do it is write down your roles that you're currently facing. I would then continue with thinking, okay, what are my actual duties? Yeah, very practical. The duties that I know, what I expect from myself, and then what others are expecting from me. And the key to these exercises is to be quite critical with yourself. And that's why usually if you did this with in a coaching situation, a coach would be kind of confronting you and asking, are you sure? Are you sure your boss is actually expecting that from you in this situation? Because I think also companies have an idea that this is difficult. So I don't think they're expecting the same performance. Maybe some are, and then that's something to also talk about, whether that's fair or not. Anyway, so when you're at home potentially doing this exercise, then I threw in some helping questions. For example, is it true? Am I sure if it's true? What proof do I have that it's true? So to really challenge yourself, to get down to the core of it, what is actually expected from you versus what you have emotionally internalized. And once that is done, then you can come to a compromise. And in any other case, compromise I find a little bit of a problematic concept in relationships. I think compromise means that nobody actually gets what they want. So I think consensus is a better one. But in today's situation, I think compromise is good enough. So what I invite you, or what I think could be helpful, is to really make this chart and look at it and say, okay, maybe I'm not going to be the mother of the year in this 1 month. Maybe I believe that screen time is not good for kids, but maybe the only one. I can also deliver on other duties if I make compromises. So this can be a struggle, yeah. This is a struggle of values, and this is a struggle of where you see yourself, but then also this is you being intentional and being aware of the situation. The second thing is about remapping your life. So the other thing that happened is that everything that we usually do got zipped into this apartment that you're currently in, I'm presupposing. So I think that has a lot of no, not necessarily negative, but potentially challenging aspects. One of them is that I don't think that we're mentally ready. So when you go to work, or where you take the kids to the school, that's a ritual. Yeah, when you wake up in the morning, when you jump in your pajamas to your table and open your computer, that's not the same ritual. So you're expecting yourself to emotionally get into a work mode automatically, but I'm not sure that that actually works, or it's more difficult. So I do suggest just a little bit of intentionality. And of course, this is, you do this self-reflection exercise, and hopefully in 2 weeks' time, we're out of all of this. But I think that even for a few days, it can be very overwhelming if you, if you're expecting something from yourself, but the context of what you're about to deliver is totally different. So this is, again, I just made this up. I think this is something that could potentially be a fun thing to do, is to just really put together all the tasks that you want to do, and then create a day. And it can be a normal time plan. I wanted to make it like a game in this visualization. About structures, I do believe that some structures help. Especially not to everybody. So I think there are people who are naturally good at being disciplined and changing moods, etc. There are more people for whom it's a little bit more difficult to keep. There are people who can, in certain situations, just fall apart a little bit more, find it very difficult to get out of the bed, watch, just play the game every day, and that's all. And I will talk about that, why that can also be beneficial. But I think that some structure can be helpful. Yeah. So that's up for you to decide. Also boundaries. Yeah. So the other thing is it's not only your day, but everybody else who lives in the same apartment, right? So establishing boundaries as well can be helpful. And then the third idea, or the third thing that I put in here, is also that your apartment has suddenly become your apartment, still your workplace, the school, everything. Yeah, and that I think that can also be challenging. Maybe it's working for you. Maybe you also already have routine. Maybe it's difficult. Again, just think about yourself as somebody who's going through moods, and it can be challenging to switch from one to the other. So also be intentional about how you use your space. Just a silly example. the table that you see all of this photographed on is my dining table, and I do a lot of work on that dining table actually because it's the most comfortable place. But it's hard for me to you know, to just to switch from, okay, now we're eating and now I'm working at the same table. So the one thing that I do, and it's silly, and I'm not sure that it's 100, definitely doesn't solve fully the situation, but it helps, is that when I'm working, I'm sitting at one end of the table facing one thing, and then when I'm eating, I'm sitting on the other side of the table and facing another thing. So it's kind of like I'm trying to subconsciously put myself in a different thing, in a different mood. Also, it can help if you change clothes. So there are people who I think function better if they put on work clothes when they want to work, and so on and so forth. This is a long story. If you're intentional about your planning your day, that's already great. And then a third one is about resetting your boundaries. And I think that right now a lot of relationships are going through a difficult time. Some of the relationships are also going through a wonderful time. I think it's all about, well, there are several elements to that, but I think that one of them is really being also intentional about the boundaries. I did not detail this now because I will talk a little bit later about relationships in more detail. But yeah, again, everything has changed outside. So it's just a gentle kind of reminder that it's also, so you have your usual relationship dynamics with everybody, with people who are the closest to you, but also with your neighbor, with your friends, and so on. You may not be able to deliver on the same dynamics right now in this situation. So I think it's completely okay in that situation to renegotiate boundaries. And I know that the last talk here was about toxic relationships. I found that a lot. I'm sure that there was a lot of talk about boundaries, but this is one thing that's it's always okay to just you know feel what it is that I need from the other person, what it is that I can give, and to stand up to and to be authentic about that. Okay, that was cluster number one, and I don't know if you would like to before we move on. Yeah, do you have any questions? Let me. What I would suggest we do is mostly focus on clarification questions at this point in time, and then I'm going to try to leave more space at the end for just a general discussion. I don't know if there's anything that's interested that's you would like to ask right now. If not, then I'll be moving on to the second question, and then let's see what that brings. Okay, good. I'll move on, and then again in another couple of minutes. So if you had a question now, I can also just come back to it right now, in a few minutes. So the second one, I took two questions from you. What was, and I did slightly reword the questions just to kind of clear them a little bit, but I believe I kept the spirit of the questions. One was, how do I deal with overthinking? And the second one was, I'm feeling anxiety about the present and about the future. And then I was the one who actually put their fear and worry as well, because there's a lot of connected emotions, obviously. So this is a big topic. I think there's a lot that can be connected to it, and yeah, there's different approaches that belong here, and I think the next cluster is also going to kind of relate to this. So there's a lot on this topic. So first of all, I wanted to give you, and this is the end during the whole talk, that I give a little bit of theory or my perspective on things, but the crisis, what actually crisis means, is that the way you have been doing, so personal crisis, the way you have been dealing with situations is no longer functioning. Yeah. So what happens is that there's an unusual new situation. You try to do something that you you try to solve it in a way that you previously solved challenges with, and it's not working. And what that starts is a spiral of things. First of all, you start questioning. First of all, you question whether you're really sensing the information correctly. But then when it's very clear that there's something wrong happening, then the next level will be that you start questioning your competencies, your skills, and your behaviors to deal with the situation. And when that gets even worse, or when the situation gets more intense, or then the next level is you're going to be challenging your beliefs, your values, and that can all go all the way to challenging your own identity, putting all of that in a question. This is kind of a documented route of what happens. And obviously it really sucks to be going through that experience. It's a very difficult, challenging, intense thing to be going through. What it does do, on the other hand, is that it loosens up some mental structure and helps rebuild new neural connections, and you start looking for new solutions. I believe at the intro, Kathy exactly was talking about a personal crisis of hers, and immediately she said, okay, so this is what I experienced, and then I started looking for solutions, right? So then you start looking for new things, and that's the whole point of it, that we're adapting to things. But it's not. It's the process itself. Obviously, is a challenging one, and I think that right now the thing that's happening on the outside world is putting a lot of us into a personal crisis. So it has an effect. So that's one point of it. So going through anxiety and stress is a natural thing. And I think, and one of the things that I really want to stress tonight is that everything you're feeling is normal to feel. And I wanted to talk a little bit about stress and anxiety. In fact, I wanted to recommend a book. I don't know if you've read or heard about this book, and I'm not sure if it's available in English. I hope it is. But from an evolutionary perspective, stress is really, there's nothing in us that's redundant. Yeah. The writer is really good. He's a neurologist and a scientist, and what he writes about is the necessity of the stress reaction. So even though we may not like it, but when something happens and we feel stressed, that's actually what starts the process of rebuilding and finding new neural pathways, new connections, therefore helping you find the solutions. Obviously, when the stress is too much or happening over a long period of time, then it leaves you vulnerable, etc., then it's not good. But some stress is actually normal, and that's all I'm going to say about this subject, because I feel that there's a lot available on this. What I, however, want to say, so essentially, it's normal when something like this happens. Overthinking, I think, is very, very normal, very natural. The question is how intense the emotion is, and in this cluster, I will be talking about some narrative techniques that I love, that I work with quite a lot. But the thing is, if you're very much in a fight or flight mode, then we're much more narrow, much more blocked, and we may not even be able to access that part of ourself which can help us through the narrative technique. So in that case, one of the most basic things that you can do is simply just breathe. Yeah. So just take a deep breath, and what you can also try to do in these situations is just try to feel it in your body. Feeling the emotion in your body is already helping you dissociate. And being mindful. What is that emotion? Where is it? Trying to allow it as much as possible to happen. Breathing always helps. Yeah. So breathing is a first good step. And then I think what's really important is that all emotions deserve to be heard and deserve to be experienced. They want to be felt, and therefore I think it's very important to allow ourselves to be present as much as we can to every emotions that we're going through. So listening in. And there are a few models, there are a few ideas that I collected here. The base of all of it is obviously is just simply asking yourself, how am I feeling right now? Yeah. And there is a tool called affect balance or emotional balance. I wrote down from whom it stems, and essentially it is right. It is exactly what I was asking you in the checking round and the breathing exercise. Is, of course, I know that there's the labeling itself is perhaps because I don't know if there's really positive emotions, negative emotions, but for the sake of this exercise, so are they pleasant, or are they emotions that I'm feeling good about right now? How, and to what percent? So you try to give it a percentage. And what's really cool about this is that it's not, the two should not add up or don't have to add up to 100%. Yeah. So I can feel right now in this example, I believe I'm feeling 70% happy right now because it was a beautiful day, because I enjoy being with you all. Yeah, I don't know, because my internet connection is good and but at the same time, I can also be 80% feeling unhappy or worried. If you've seen what's the name of the movie? Oh God, Inside Out. Yeah. So since at least since then we know that emotions coexist. Yeah. So there's this idea that we sometimes have that being happy is the opposite of being sad. Actually, they quite happily coexist in the same self. So honoring that and just listening in and saying, okay, right now I'm feeling like this and like this and like this and like this is a really helpful exercise. The second thing is, and that's on the right side, is the name the emotion. I simply invite you to name your emotions. I think it's very hard. Many people find it very challenging because we're not really used to it. So I challenge you not to stop at the point when you say I'm feeling bad, but to try to find the detail. So what does that feel like? Yeah. Is it, am I feeling embarrassed, shy, guilty? So try calibrating it. And if you really have difficulty, you can actually, and this is what I said, you can download a list of emotions and also emoji charts from the internet. So you can actually take a look at the emojis, which would help you actually configure. And the more you get into the exercise of actually naming your own emotions, the more you will be able to be mindful of that, which is already helping you process that. It's as simple as that. And the third one is, of course, journaling, which is in general a great exercise. Just writing it out. Where in my body, I think I've talked about it before, so I'll move on to the next slide. Yeah. So one thing about this is. I wanted to mention, please avoid toxic positivity. I think that I would strongly stand for that at any point. But right now, what I'm noticing is that there's a lot of content going on about how we should be actually happy about what's going on, because there's this happening and there's that happening, and this is just a new world and everything is, and that can be true, and you can still also be feeling bad right now, or sad, or worried, or overwhelmed. All of those emotions are completely fine. And what happens when we, there's this therapist saying is that if you have a problem and you don't want it, then you have two problems. So essentially, if you're feeling in a way, and then also feeling bad that you're feeling about that, there's also an internal conflict adding on to that. So I invite you to just allow anything that's right now there in you. Wow, that became busy. So Okay, the second thing is, of course, reaching out and connecting is very important, which is also about being present, but being present to another person. And of course, we're distancing, but many of us actually have, opportunity, thankfully, to connect over the internet and so on. So I think that this can be also a fantastic time in many relationships. There are a lot of conflicts, and conflicts are actually a form of intimacy between people. So conflicts can be great. Um, it's nice to be aware, again, to be intentional about them. It's also nice to be able to be authentic. And so this is I guess my most important message is, I invite you to be present to the other people, to your loved ones, first of all. And at the same time, be authentic about how much you can give at that point in time, and where are your boundaries, where are your limits, because I think it's okay. And my second advice would be to be honest about, so I think that the depth, the quality of sharing really makes a difference. So articulating, talking about your feelings, and talking about your emotional needs, I think is powerful. And the third thing is that don't forget that we're all in this process, yeah? So you're going through, I guess, emotions like this, and the other person is as well. They also have an emotional need, and I think this is a thing about being present to the other person, how we listen, yeah? There's a level of factual, I'm listening to you, what you're saying in terms of the info content. And there's also the underlying layer, which is I'm listening to your emotional needs that are happening. And just simply, if the other person is not in the place right now to be present for you, I think be mindful of that as well, that they are also in a process. So you do not necessarily have to take that as a sign of, that being about you, for example. I have put in here, this is, and I'm not going to do justice to nonviolent communication because it's a fantastic system that is much deeper than the two sentences I'm going to tell about it right now. But I still find the formula super good when it comes to talking about your emotions. Actually, nonviolent communication works beautifully also if you're going through a challenging time or you're going through a conflict. And essentially it goes like this. When this or that happens, yeah, so they start with an observation, an objective as much as possible, observation, or when you do this, I feel so and so, I need to be seen or to be heard, to be understood, therefore please do such and such and do a request. What this does is, first of all, it allows you to take responsibility for your own emotions and for your emotional needs. It's okay to have emotions, it's okay to have needs, right? And then also articulate a clear request to the other person. You can also do it with your own, actually, between your inner parts. Maybe that's weird. I do that sometimes. It helps. It's just a formula to clean the communication. It does do magic. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to say more about this. If you're interested more about this topic, it's called nonviolent communication, or GFK in German. Yeah. Okay, so there was more of the non-rational approaches, and I'm going to go just a little bit more into the narrative side of the things, and some really cool methods here as well. So one of them, if you're overthinking, there's a lot of chatter going on. One of the things that you can do, if that's what seems right for you, is to actually tell your story. And I'm going to first show you the left side of the one with the orange, and then I'm going to go on to the fairy tale one. So what you can do is essentially write down your story, write it down. So what you're going through, write it as if it was a story. Helps dissociation, helps taking you the meta position. And then the other thing you can do is try to tell it from a different perspective, encourages you to take different perspectives. So if what I'm saying is that it's really hard being here alone in this apartment, then that's the first thing I will write down. And then try to write the story from the perspective of your cat, of your couch, of your partner, of your neighbor. So try to see how they would explain the same story. Again, what it will simply do is help you get out, dissociate for a second from your own thinking, from your overthinking, yeah, and to put things into a different perspective. The second thing that you can do is try reframing. So everything, by definition, everything that took you until here helped you or made you stronger in some way, yeah, because you're right now here on this call. So everything that's difficult right now is also going to make you stronger. So just find it. Yeah, so everything that's hard right now is one day going to be a resource. It's going to be something that is going to help you on the longer run. So find what it is. That's another way you can think of. And then finally, what you can do, again, a mental exercise, again, helping you rewrite the narrative, is just to think about writing the exact opposite of the story. And feel if you can do that. Like literally sit down and write the opposite of that story. The other route is, obviously I wrote, this is all about you being more intentional about your narrative, yeah? These narratives are running all around in our head. What this does is actually make us look at it. And looking at it is very powerful. And it's something that you can do as well at home. I also work with, so I'm also a fairy tale therapist or fairy tale counselor. I do work with fairy tales with adults. They work fantastically, I think. I'm really excited. I'm not going to talk about it so much today, but anyway. So obviously all of the fairy tales work like a hero. They have this famous structure of the hero's journey. So the hero will start, there will be difficulties, they will meet a helper, they will get something from them, and so on and so on. So try to write the story that you're going through as a fairy tale, yeah, and try to structure it as a hero's journey. And try to finish it. And that's what's very important, yeah? Because if right now you're finding yourself in a difficult situation, then you're gonna be most probably hitting a wall when the hero or heroine meets the dragon or falls into the pit or something happens to them. But then there's the challenge for you to find a good solution and think symbolically. Okay, so if there was if my hero found a dragon, what would they need at this point in time? And then try, really, go creative, write a fairy tale. And after you've written the fairy tale and it feels right, then bring it back and try to translate it into your everyday. What did that helper mean? How can I utilize it? Yeah. So work a little bit around the symbols. Yes, so these are mostly things that I work with in person with my clients, but I have had positive experiences with clients actually writing fairy tales as homework, so I think it should work as well. So I challenge you to do it. I think it's a fun exercise as well. The second thing, and I think this is one of those slides where I really wanted to stress that not everybody, so be mindful about what method works for you, because I think, for example, if you have OCD, then you do not need to go any further into your fear. So really, this is just again a reminder to be mindful about which exercise you use. But I did want to talk a little bit about this because for many people it can be a very, very useful tool that I find can be very helpful, and that is really exploring your fear. So fears or anxieties, in many cases, are the most scary when they're diffuse. Yeah, when they don't have a shape or form, when they're there in the closet. Yeah, the monster in the closet or under the bed. If it comes out, then maybe it's scary, but at least I see it. So already I have an approach to it. Yeah. So so what could be so the one thing that does help is actually thinking about what it is that I'm afraid of, and be specific. And here's the challenge. Yes, I'm afraid of, I don't know, losing my job. Okay, so so what would be the worst thing that would happen if I wouldn't be able to pay the car loan? Okay, so I would lose the car. Okay, so what would happen if I would lose the car? Okay, so going to this, and finally arrive. Okay, actually, what I'm most afraid about is that, and that's a specific thing. Yeah, and so you can actually see what we're doing. We're taking the darkness and we're putting a spotlight into it. Yeah, and what happens is that, first of all, what happens often in this process is that people say, oh, actually, that's not even so scary as I thought. Number two, you can think about actually with the rational self, how realistic that is. You can also think about how have I experienced something like this before? So do I already have resources that I can use? And if you're the type, maybe you can also make a plan. So if this happens, what would I do? Again, this is something that I definitely normally do with clients in sessions. Yeah, if you feel that this is something for you, I did want to share. Again, you use it with caution. It can help. However, the next one is one of my favorites, and it's super easy to explain, and I think super hard to do. Is really taking the meta position. So when you're going through a difficult emotion, there's anxiety, there's overthinking going on. For example, then the first thing you do is, oh, okay, right now I'm anxious. Yeah, so noticing that is already sometimes very challenging. That's when the breath that I was already talking about helps. So you identify the emotion and you say something like, I'm worried that I will lose my job. And then the next step, and this is taking the meta position, is simply saying, aha, a part of me is worried that I will lose my job. Or you could say, I have an emotion. There's a huge difference between saying I am afraid and I have the emotion of being feared, because then you're already separate. So dissociating from the heart feeling, for the feeling that is challenging for you right now at that moment helps. The story that I'm telling myself is another nice one. I borrowed this from Brené Brown. It also works beautifully in relationships. Yeah. So the story that I'm telling myself is that I will lose my job. Already helps to take that couple centimeter distance from that emotion. So you take a look, and then you invite the rational self to say, okay, so yeah, then you start thinking, okay, so has it happened to me before? What would I do? And so on and so on. That starts a different conversation than when you're overwhelmed by that emotion. Yeah, and that was the second cluster, and I'm going slower than I thought. So let me look at if you have any questions.
Yes, we have a question.
Say what? Sorry.
We have a question actually. Should I read it out loud to you?
Sure. Let me check. Okay, so the question reads, rituals, how important do you think the role of sleep patterns? I feel like shifting my sleep patterns is detrimental to my overall energy and well-being. Like when I go to sleep too late, I wake up with the same hours of sleep, more fatigued, more anxious, and less able to think clearly. I have just discovered that recently. I love nights and the creativity that comes with it, but it kind of messes up my brain, I feel. I'm with you. Yeah, so the normal day schedule, does not work well with me either. So I love my night hours I just function better in the night hours. But yes, I'm also especially in this isolation now, I've been forcing myself to, and I'm not saying I'm getting up at 6, I'm getting up at 8, but I do make myself get out, because I have noticed that same thing as well. I think that maintaining your sleep, some sort of a frame. And again, you're welcome to adjust, so you don't have to copy paste what you were using before. You can intentionally use it. You can intentionally replan it, but have a structure that you stick to. Yeah, so that framing the structure, I think is helpful, because if you totally lose structure, I think that's closer to depression and so on. So I think that it is helpful. I do agree. Okay, so I thought we could do a 5-minute break, but I realized that I'm running a bit late. So I don't know. Should we? What do you think, Kathy? Should we do a bit of a break, or should we just continue? We're about at so thematically we're about to half, but the second half is going to be shorter. So, but still. Maybe what I would do is just invite everybody to stretch a little bit and take a deep breath, and I'll do the same. And I think I will also, and I will continue. Is that okay with you, Kathy?
Yeah, let's do a few minutes.
Okay, good. Yeah, stretch, jump, always nice. Okay. If you stayed here in front of the computer, you're always welcome to share in the chat window how you're doing right now, what's going on. Is this useful? Have you heard anything that could be relevant? And so on. Okay, so yeah, I do see a slight chance that that it will not finish exactly at 9 o'clock, but I'll try to, because there's some really cool stuff still coming up, and really good and important questions. So I'll try to make sure that we fit everything. Okay.
Yeah, I would say let's continue, right?
Okay, let's continue. All right. So, all right. This seems like a lot, but actually, I don't think it's gonna be so. And I'll try to go through it quickly. I think it's actually very close to the previous cluster, which is how do I deal with uncertainties? There's present as well as long-term uncertainties, and self-doubt and bad thoughts about myself. I think I've already, and this is one of the reasons why I was talking previously about the crisis and what happens in the crisis, that self-doubt is one of the first things that happens. So again, a very normal emotion to, to be going through. Yeah, so in this cluster, I wanted to talk a little bit more about the uncertainty part. And my hypothesis that one of the reasons why we're feeling uncertain is because we have simply lost control. Yeah, it's a big situation that and we're feeling out of control, and we like feeling in control usually. So I'll start with that, and then I'll move on to some different subjects. So this is about again, nothing super creative about this. I'm sure you've seen that 10,000 times. So what I invite you to do in this exercise is to really think about what you can control and what you cannot control in the current situation. What you cannot control, or what you have no influence over, would be the red on the outside. What you can control is what you put in the yellow. And then the orange is things that you can influence. So you can do something about it, but you need to ask for help, or you need somebody else to do it. The orange obviously is an opportunity to reach out to people and to do something together. What's really I think there's a lot of there's a lot of this chart actually going around just recently, and what I find important is for you to fill it out for yourself and to be very realistic and very critical perhaps with yourself. And I just put in the questions that I once already mentioned. Is it true? Do I have proof that it's true? Who says it's true? And so on. So asking yourself those questions. I think we sometimes tend to want to take too much control, and sometimes we tend to just totally let go of control and not realize that we can actually do some things. Yeah. So one example would be, I don't know, before this session, I found myself worrying about whether the internet connection is going to stop in the middle of my talk, and that's clearly something that I cannot control. So putting it into that box was helpful. Did it make me feel better? In itself, perhaps not. I went back to my meta position. Okay, there's a part of me. So you can also use that in combination. There are things that you cannot control. You cannot control how much toilet paper other people buy, for example. And it's your choice. Again, it's your choice if you're going to post about it or no. But that's just to be aware of it. Yeah. So there are, on the other hand, things that you can do from your end. For example, stay at home. You are actually having an impact with that, and so on. So you get the concept. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it, but really, what this helps you do is have a sense of agency, have a sense of power, because what you can choose to do, and that's already active, that's not a victim, that's not powerless. We can choose to do is put more focus on the things that you can do or can control, and you can choose to focus a little bit less about the things that you cannot control. There's obviously a lot of stressful things that are going on, which are not, and I'm not saying that that's going to be easier to go with, simply because now you know that you cannot control it. Here comes the famous Viktor Frankl quote, of course, that the ultimate freedom is choosing how we are choosing our attitude to the things that we cannot, to the things that we cannot, that are out of our scope of influence. The reason why I find it very interesting is just the other day, just yesterday, I think I read a speech from a Gestalt therapist who was saying that we love routines because they give us the illusion of control. So we plan our days. It's an illusion. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't want to feel helpless. Boredom is the price we pay for that illusion. So structures are usually boring. Why would you do that? Just accept that that you're helpless. And yeah, I think I find that's true on one hand. On the other hand, I think it's quite a tough thing to do for some people. So I think both. Essentially, that's why I'm working always with both approaches. I think you can choose whatever works. One thing that I think you can choose is to take care of your body. So not my core territory, but I think that you can choose to breathe, to stretch. You can choose to exercise. I'm not saying you should. Yeah. Limit alcohol. These are things that do help. What you do over your body is also not self-explanatory. So people who are right now in ICU, for example, do not have this choice, but you most probably listening to this do. So already, if you choose to cook yourself a healthy meal instead of something fast, then that's already giving you a little piece of empowerment. Yes? So the more intentional you are about the way you do things, the more you feel this kind of stepping into your power. The second thing is, and this is usually quite challenging, or this is quite a this is a concept that it sounds confrontational actually. It's about spending your day. I'm not going to go into too much detail about it because we've already, based on the question, we talked about it. But essentially, managing your time, being intentional about your time, is essentially giving you the subconscious feeling of being in charge of your life. And I think one of the scary things that happened is that we lost that feeling. Yeah. So we had our timetable filled until the summer and so on, and all of that scale even shrank. Yeah. So we couldn't even know what's going to happen tomorrow. And then but you can already see that the scale is intruding. So now we kind of see, okay, limitations will be until the end of April, until 20th of April, whatever. So the scale is already kind of pushing out, but at the beginning of this whole crisis, it was very, very, like, I didn't know if I will be able to go into work tomorrow or whatever. So what you can think about, and this is very much, for example, for parents, a lot of their time is taken up, so they're not in control of all of it, but there is always a portion that you are responsible for, that is your freedom. And planning that freedom consciously gives a lot of sense of being. And again, going back to the Gestalt therapist, it is an illusion, yes. If I decide today that I'm gonna do 3 things tomorrow and I don't know, something happens and it doesn't work out, then yeah, that's life. But planning and wanting it or being intentional about it already helps, I believe, in some situations. And then you can also choose how much social media and how much content you consume. Yeah, how much Corona content you consume. And again, I'm not going to tell you that you should, I don't know, consume less than more. It's your choice. Just be intentional about it. The second part of this is really finding a sense of purpose, which is more about being present again. So being present, I find it very important, but to others, and not necessarily in your relationship, but to a larger group. Yeah, I think having a sense of purpose really helps. Everything that makes us feel, makes us help zoom out a little bit. So feeling that, oh, I'm doing something for more people. Does help. Again, I think it's important to be authentic about it. So only give as much as you can give in that moment. And I think you're already giving. So just by staying at home, you're actually helping save lives. So celebrate yourself for doing that, and celebrate yourself for helping your child or partner and so on. So make sure that you really have an idea of how many people you already have a positive impact on. That's already a positive thing that can help. And then being present to another person, offering kindness and support, and just listening, just presence. You don't have to solve. Actually, you cannot solve the other person's problems, but being there is huge. And another potentially confrontative thing is I see a lot of. So I think we sometimes have a tendency to be altruistic very fast without actually assessing how much energy we ourselves have. I think it's also a way of us avoiding dealing with our own difficult emotions. I think we love to jump into a project, helping others. And that can lead to burnout. I do feel, don't forget the airplane principle. First you put on your own oxygen mask and then you help others. The same concept applies here. Creativity and fun helps. And this is creativity and fun that you enjoy. So it's not creativity and fun that is a painting course that you take on and that you would really like to, no. So these are things that you really enjoy and that helps you express. Yeah, I work with, and that's why I put in, I work with oil pastels because they slide, they're smooth. Watercolors work as well. They help you actually express your emotions through a non-verbal way, and they help you process. So when you're dealing with going through difficult emotions, start painting. Colored pencils kind of tend to take us back to the time where we were in school already, so they're not so effective I find the crayons and oil and water paint a bit better. But yeah, dance, sing, anything you enjoy. Yeah, anything that helps you go into the flow. And just to show you that I'm walking the talk, this was me working for a day on this presentation, and I loved it. Yeah, so it was my kind of creative project. I really enjoyed it. That's why I did it, actually. It does help to read fairy tales, mythology, fantasy. Obviously, given I'm a fairy tale counselor, I do have a lot. But anything that's yours, that's your like. I won't have time to go into why, for example, your favorite fairy. If you remember what was your favorite fairy tale from our childhood, find it, read it again. All fairy tales, no, it's a gross exaggeration. Most of the fairy tales have the hero journey structure, so they take the hero through a difficulty, and then they also show you how they emerge. So they kind of help you process those emotions. If you find yourself anything, by the way, anything that helps you connect to your soul in a more symbolic level helps. So if Marvel's comics is your thing, perfect. If you find yourself wanting to play a lot of video games, which helps you symbolically deal with the enemy and so on, go for it. Again, perhaps from our perspective, you could say these are avoiding, but no, actually, I think that in many cases these help with the emotions. Yeah, gratitude journal. I think it's been, they say it often, and I'm not going to say too much about it, but it actually helps. And I forgot, I wanted to actually reference the study that showed that you actually, by finding one thing that you're grateful for every day, you rewire your brain for optimism. And when it's and it's amazing. So one thing you can do, and when it's hard, that's the best. So when you have to challenge yourself to find that one thing that you write on a paper and you collect, over a period of time, you will feel more optimistic. And that has been shown. So very simple thing you can do. And then finally, spiritual practice, prayer, if that is your thing, then of course that also helps with overthinking. It helps with anxieties. But then if that's your thing, then you don't need me telling you that anyway. So yeah. So here I was talking a little bit more about, on one hand, about being more intentional about the things that you can control, to help you deal a little bit more with this feeling of uncertainty or helplessness, perhaps. And then the other side was this kind of like finding a sense of something bigger, yeah, finding more symbolic ways of dealing with the same emotions. What I would suggest is that, because the last cluster is only 3 or 4 slides, I would jump there, and then I will answer all questions and all together, because I'm aware of the time as well. And then the last one was quite a specific question, but I kept it because I find it really a good representation of things that many of us are going through. Is I've already invested time and money into previous projects, yeah, studies, into my freelancer work and so on. So was it all useless? Was it all a failure? Yeah. What we're dealing here, of course, is the fact that we have no idea how our life is going to change, and that leads us back to the previous question of uncertainties. But so one thing that I wanted to mention at this point is that I believe we're all going through some level of grief. And because I think we're grieving, we have lost a sense of understanding where we were headed. And some of us have lost specifically jobs and so on. So that's one aspect. But I think in some aspect, we're all going through some sense, a reconfiguration, and therefore we're kind of grieving an old life of ours. And grief has its stages. It's not my core territory, but yeah, you can read about it. Actually, I read a really good article, I can recommend it to you later, about coronavirus as a grieving process. You may be aware, in grieving, there's the stage of denial, there's anger, there's bargaining. Yeah, so you have to go through really the emotions. For example, I'm still in denial that so right now I think that I will not have to cancel my summer plans. So I'm in denial about that. Yeah, there are certain things that about which I was already angry. So yeah, and again, just allow itself what wants to hurt itself out. I think it is healthy to allow it to hurt itself out. And then the second thing is this honor the space between. I think it's where we are right now, many of us, in this vacuum, in this empty space between no longer, we have left something, and not yet, so we don't really know where we're headed. And I think it takes a lot of courage to be in that in between, but that in between is actually a fruitful space. It's a space that actually allows for new things to be born. So essentially, when I'm talking about honoring this space in between, I think it's about also being present to what's emerging in this moment. And I think it's one of those things, again, which is easier said than done. So I was thinking, okay, what can I give that's a little bit more tangible? So I'd like to now to ask you to imagine that that's a treasure chest, because that's how far my artistic abilities took that treasure chest project. And essentially thinking about, okay, so the specific question was, what do I do with, I did my studies, I did my job, I had my freelancer job. Well, you haven't lost any of that because it's going on with you. You may not be able to use all of that, everything that you collected up until now in that specific form, how you thought you would be, but those skills, that knowledge, those resources, those values, everything will be with you and will support you along your way. So I do encourage you to simply list it. Make a list of your resources, become aware of your treasure chest on one hand. And on the other hand, about the future, I think it's very, very difficult right now that we're in the process of letting go of certain things. And at the same time, I think what we are being invited to is to let other things come. So what I think, one thing I would suggest is writing a fictional time capsule and really thinking about, so in the language of the fairy tales, the hero will go deep under, so of course symbolizing the subconscious, so under the sea or into the cave and so on, or will climb the beanstalk and go to the giant. So there's always a perspective change, going higher or deeper. They will find something there and then they will bring it back to their everydays. Yeah. So to use the same analogy, right now we're realizing a lot of things. In the first week, I realized what are the things that actually are making me happy. Because I started instinctively letting go of things that I don't think are so important, and I never realized they were not important. But all of a sudden, I was, oh, okay, yeah, actually, I could count on one hand what are the things that I need really. So that knowledge may be lost actually in a couple of months when we go back to, and I don't know if you're going to go back to business as usual, but I think it's nice to make a mental note right now, because that's also going to be something. My overall so in my work as a counselor and coach, what my usual topic is, am I living authentically? And at first glance, this Corona crisis is not really about that, but at a second, I think it's all about that, because it's putting us into this test tube right now. And right now, you look at your own life from exploded, and you see relationships, work, everything from a different life. And I think that learning will be interesting to then take on and say, okay, Corona crisis gone. What do I do right now with my life? And I would encourage you not to put the pressure on yourself to actually make plans. Because I think it's really hard right now to make plans because we really can't see, or at least I cannot. I don't know, companies will be having budgets to pay me for business coaching or whatever. So I'm also trying not to make plans right now. So random ideas, silly ideas, wishes, dreams, just write them down and put them in a time capsule and revisit them in a couple of months. Yeah? And that's it. I think I've given a lot of bigger, smaller types of exercises that perhaps would need you to sit down and think a little bit. Others which are just kind of perhaps helping you be a little bit more present. I think there are essentially two messages I would have in general. I think half of my ideas were referring to really this idea that you could find it helpful to just simply be present to what's going on with you right now, to allow it to happen. And then if you can, and if it's okay to also be present to others. And then if it's also okay for you to be present to a community or to a larger space, and then also to be present to the moment or what this is, what's emerging right now. So presence, I think, was in different stages. I was talking about a lot about presence. That's on one hand, and on the other hand, I wanted to share with you methods that would perhaps help you own your narrative, feel more in your power, be intentionality perhaps. Look at whatever you're doing, be conscious, be aware of it, and make choices, choose what you do. And then between these two, maybe today you're more ready to do more of this and less of that. And then maybe tomorrow it's going to be different. So also try to feel it, what's right for you at this point and time. So yeah, I hope you found this. I hope you found this helpful. If you have any, right now it's question time. So I don't know if you have questions. Yeah.
If they write them down, right, instead of.
Yeah. As you wish. Yeah. Also, if you want to share in the chat what's going on with you right now, how are you feeling? Just looking forward to any sort of thought that comes up right now. If you want to unmute yourself, you're welcome to do that as well. I did put my my contacts there. If you would like to field, if you would like to get the presentation, you can drop me a mail, and I'm not going to do anything with your data. And I'm just going to send it back to you, the presentation. But also, if you prefer, I can share it with you, Kathy, and I don't know if we can make it available. Again, this is, this is yours to use, so we can think about that.
Testing it. And I mean, a session is also recorded, so you can also.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool.
On YouTube.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you to you too for being present.
Oh no, thank you. That was a whole amount of input, and I'm pretty sure that we can. Yeah. I was just about to say go home with at least one inspirational idea, but we are probably all home, so that doesn't.
Right.
But leave the Zoom with at least a few ideas which we could try. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'm reading the chats in the meantime. So
yeah, no questions yet. And also, if you have feedback or if you have suggestions for other topics, then you can also just contact me via my channels, like on Facebook or on Instagram, because I'm always happy to improve these sessions, or also get ideas for new topics. So please feel free to contact me always. There's a
Yeah, good one. How to find out which method is best for me? Yeah, interesting, right? I think yeah, I'm finding it difficult to answer this question without context. But what I would really try to zoom in on, um, how you're feeling at this point in time. So what it is that you would like to first of all work with. That's number one. And then based on that, you can so feeling in. I would be a good starting point, yeah. And also what's going on with that. And then I think that it is at that point that you also get a better feel for, um, am I okay to be with this right now, or do I want to work further with it? And when you decide to work further with it, I think it's always good to brainstorm lots of things of what's what. So just simply find other words. So what a little bit like the narrative methods I was talking about, where you're like, what it is that I'm feeling. Okay, what's going on with that? What's going? So a little bit trying to find different things with it, and where would I want to be headed to? And I think that already should help you find whether you're in that rational space in which you're happy to work with one of the more rational methods that I have introduced, or if you are not able to do that right now, and then go a little bit more into the non-rational, pre-rational, so to speak, dance, do art, and so on and so forth. A part of me feels that I did not answer that question correctly, and that comes from the fact that I find it difficult. Um, yeah, usually I think it's something that comes from just feeling it in that moment. Um,
maybe if I can
yeah,
also say something,
yeah,
I think it's also a lot about trial and error. So
true.
not to
Yeah.
have the expectation of finding like when you try something that it's gonna change your life directly,
Mm-hmm.
but that you rather try to maybe get into a certain method and just try to feel along the way how it feels for you.
Yeah.
And realize after a while, well, now it's actually triggering more anxiety. Then you can choose to maybe say, yeah, well, then I might choose another tool or another method, and like a little playful with it. Like this is what helped me a lot, was to play with certain tools and not be because this is also what brought me into the burnout, like being really
Mm-hmm.
so being like, does this work now or does it not? And being playful with it and just being like, yeah, I'm just gonna try this painting thing today, and then feel like, oh yeah, that's fun. And it made it easier for me to actually start trying different things.
Right. And the trick with that is, I think, also not overwhelming yourself. So I think that's different. But I do agree. There's a lot of benefit in just really allowing your that space to try out different things. The other thing that's challenging there is when you have resistance to a method or to something that's happening, is that resistance actually part of your process? So maybe that resistance is actually you feeling, no, it's not right for me, but actually it would be, but it's just about staying in it and working with that a little bit. So I think that's also challenging, but yeah, testing around does help. Also, again, absolutely not about advertising. That I think there's a lot of help out there. There's counselors, coaches, and I think that you can just take one session, find somebody who does like one session or two sessions. So you don't have to. So if you have something specific, I think we sometimes think, oh, I have to sign up for a whole process or whatever. But actually, I think a lot of us also work like, yeah, we bring an issue and we talk about this for an hour. So I think that also the other thing is, if you have somebody in your life who has this ability of being present to you and just being able to listen and to gently mirror, is great. I think one of the things that we tend to do in our friendships and relationships is that we want to solve the thing. So actually, I don't think it's too helpful. It's much more helpful when we allow just, like, okay, yeah, so you're feeling sad right now. So let's just sit together with you feeling sad right now. Yeah, and then that also with methods, I think it works. Okay. So thank you for making it in English. Thank you. Yeah, I think I could have done it in German as well, but I'm also happy that I got to do it in English. My German is not 100%. Okay, thank you. Thank you also for. I'm just trying to read the comments. If I got a question. Okay, I got a question. Like sometimes it's just too much to feel all of it. That trying to feel your emotions can be very hard. I find myself in moments of numbness. Where do you start in the moment if feeling what you feel is not an option? I would then try some of the white cards. So if you feel that there's just too much emotion, then a little bit of structure, and I think we have talked about that. I hope that I'm understanding the question correctly, but I feel the way I'm interpreting the question is that there's just an overflow of emotions, lots of emotions happening, and then also there's this numbness going on. Yeah. So I think in that case it can be helpful, for example, to decide when you're going to get out of bed. It can be helpful to clean the apartment. I'm not joking, it really helps. Yeah. So some of it, so when there's too much emotion, then a bit of grounding, which can be through anything, through any physical means as well, can help, physical exercise and so on, so forth. Because you mentioned this numbness, I also find it important to say I think it's okay to feel numbness. So I think you'll feel numbness sometime. If you feel numbness a lot, or if you find it difficult to get out of the bed, then it could be a sign of, perhaps then it could be something that you could consider talking with somebody about it, because I think that yeah, in these times right now, and yeah, I think we're in a time that's really catalyzing, that's really making our emotions big. So it's challenging. So I don't want to underplay the importance of yeah, looking out for the signals. Yeah, that's about it.
There was one question we jumped over.
Oh, sorry. Did we?
From Zoe.
Let me know. Yes, I do meditate. Yes. Yeah. Actually, there's a lot of. I do mindfulness-based meditation. I also integrate some mindfulness techniques into my practice. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's it's a basic of a few method that I well spotted.
And so Joey had the question, during this quarantine, I have been swinging between two extremes of happiness and anxiety. Thankfully, I have so much time to slow down and try new things, but then can go straight to being unsure of the future. What is a good way to try be more in the middle?
Well, the thing is, I think essential. So my first reaction is, I think it's okay to feel both of them in to a certain degree. So I think it's good to smell the roses, so to speak, to feel this happiness, to be able to celebrate. and I think, and I also mentioned this, it's also okay to allow some anxiety. So I would, the way it's worded, and again, I think it's really hard for me based on this to give very specific answers, because normally I would ask 5 more questions and then we go from there. But based on this, I would more say that you should, you could, there's no should, just try to kind of experience both. And yeah, I feel that being in the middle is a bit overrated, but that's my personal. I think yeah, I think all emotions have their place. They're essentially your system compensating itself. Yeah. So if you allow your feelings to feel themselves out, so if you allow yourself to be there for that emotion, then it will also allow you to adapt to the situation, and then you automatically tend to it. Also, any again, going back to the mindfulness, any mindfulness based technique could help. Yeah, I think if we're talking, I think the second cluster, when I was talking a lot about narrative techniques as well as some mindfulness based techniques, presence based techniques, I think that's where I would look primarily. Okay, anything else?
Yes. I have difficulties with separating home time and work time, because I get often interrupted while being in my a lot of Zoom meetings, which are more draining than actual meetings a day. I constantly feel guilty that I have to work so much while others in the household have basically nothing to do. For example, I don't contribute as much. Plus, at the end of the day, I'm tired of communicating.
Yeah, absolutely. I that's exactly what that overwhelm cluster was about. I actually experienced the same thing. I usually work. So I work in, I have one session and then I take a rest and so on. But last week I found myself 3 times being on Zoom for 8 hours straight, on camera, being part of something. It was super exhausting. And when I went out for a 15-minute break, obviously I live, you may not, but I live with others in the household who are not expecting me to be in a work mood. So who are relating to me as if they were relating to me under normal circumstances. But I just cannot give that because I'm in a different mood. So there's already a sense of clash between what I would like to give in this situation and the other situation. So all in all, I would warmly invite you to think about give the chart a thought, yeah, with the expectations, what you're expecting from yourself, and also then to yeah, I think the invitation is to be authentic about yourself and about what you can give in that moment, and set boundaries. I think boundaries are very important in this case. Okay. Any other? I think we're at the end of the questions. What do you think, Kathy?
There was just one further question from Annette asking, I think it was a follow-up question on the questions, how to find a good method.
Yeah, check them all out. Yeah.
To check them all out.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, it's all yours for choosing. Yeah, I would encourage you not to take on too much pressure on yourself either. So yeah, as much as feels fun. So obviously I enjoy. So this is for me. I'm passionate about these things. So for me, self-reflecting and trying out exercises is not. But it can be also too much. So yeah, it's you're welcome to see what works for you. And if in doubt, read a fairy tale. The only thing that I know of almost always works. Fairy tales are awesome. Okay.
Yeah, but I think these were all questions.
Okay.
I would say thanks to Bo and also to everybody who attended today.
Thank you so much for for the questions and for the feedback and for it was just and the questions that started the whole process as well. So I look forward to, you know, I hope to I'm planning to join some of the other sessions as a participant, as a listener. So look forward to that. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you want to have the presentation as a PDF or as a PowerPoint, just let me know. Otherwise, you will find the talk soon on YouTube, and I will inform you via the other channels. And yeah,
Cool.
I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And yeah, I would be super happy to welcome you also to the next Deep Talks every Wednesday, 7:30 on Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Goodbye.